Frank Mallory, seasoned detective, survivor of buried cases and institutional silence, is back. In Volume 3, The Echo of Silence, the game becomes more dangerous, the riddles sharper, and the cost of remembering higher than ever. As Mallory and Mercer plunge into the depths of digital warfare, memory theft, and psychological manipulation, one truth becomes terrifyingly clear. The real enemy isn't hiding in the dark. He's erasing the light. Welcome back, Detective Frank Mallory. Volume 3, The Echo of Silence. Chapter 1, The Whisper That Wasn't Heard. The crime scene was perfectly sealed. A private, soundproof research chamber deep within the Pinnacle think tank, nestled at the edge of the city. Inside, the lifeless body of Dr. Owen Marek, lead cybersecurity consultant, sat in an ergonomic recliner, his head tilted slightly to one side as though he dozed off mid-thought. Private investigator Julian Mercer was already on site. He moved like a man unused to being watched, analyzing the room in precise movements, his pale gray gloves brushing across surfaces others wouldn't think to check. He wasn't here for the body. Not exactly. He was here on behalf of a government subcontractor investigating digital sabotage. But the body had changed everything. The recording equipment in the room had been active. Mercer had reviewed the files. What he heard was nothing. Not even static. A perfect void. And that was suspicious. He uploaded the audio to his custom spectrum analysis tool. Within the lowest band of electromagnetic fluctuation, almost undetectable, he found it. A staccato pattern. Morse code. He lives in silence. Follow the one who never spoke. He narrowed his eyes. This wasn't a message left by a killer. This was a message buried for someone who would know how to find it. Someone like him. Hours later, Frank Mallory stared at the same photo Julian had discovered earlier. A black-and-white shot of a classified document stamped Silent Veil. It had been dug out of the cold case archive by an informant who swore the old data laundering ring Mallory had pursued was back in operation. He had ignored the warning at first. Too much had happened. He was off the grid. Retired, unofficially. But then the tip came in. Owen Marek was dead. And Marek had been one of the architects of the network Mallory could never prove existed. The connection was too direct to be coincidence. Mallory visited the crime scene after the techs cleared out. He moved differently from Mercer. Slower, heavier, more thoughtful. He noticed what Mercer had, but in his own way. The lack of entropy in the space, the temperature control, the faint scent of ozone. The room hadn't just been sealed, it had been scrubbed, but scrubbed to look untouched. In the corner, Mallory found something Mercer had overlooked. A sealed envelope inside the HVAC vent, tucked behind a grid. It contained only one thing, a photo of Mallory himself, taken 15 years ago. Written across the bottom in red ink, "You let him vanish. Now find him again." Mallory closed his eyes. He knew exactly who had sent it. And he knew exactly where to go next. Chapter 2, The Ashes of Certainty. The Public Archives building on Fairmount Avenue was supposed to be quiet after dark, but that night, two men stood silently across from each other under the dusty ceiling lights, both having broken in the same way, and neither surprised to find the other there. Julian Mercer stood with his back to the files, holding a decrypted drive in one hand, a flashlight in the other. Across from him, Frank Mallory had just unlocked a drawer with an old-school brass key. For a long moment, they stared at one another. "You're not staff," Mercer said. Mallory gave him a slow nod. "Neither are you." Julian tilted his head slightly. This isn't a random crossover, is it? No, Mallory said, and I don't believe in those anymore. They were standing over the same file, case number 49-8SV. Owen Marrick's name now linked to both of their investigations. Mercer, the digital sleuth chasing traces of covert sabotage. Mallory, the aging detective chasing the ghost of a data network long denied by every official channel. The file contained one page, a photograph, a security camera still of a man entering a building, time-stamped 3 weeks before Marrick's death. The man in the photo had no face, literally. The image was blurred, corrupted. The metadata had been erased, stamped diagonally across the page. Silent Veil. Mercer read the label. You've seen this before. Mallory sighed. Too many times. It's a code name for something we were never meant to follow. Every time I got close, someone vanished. Witness, source, sometimes the whole trail. They call it Silent Veil because it doesn't just hide people. It erases them. Mercer pocketed the photo. Then we have a common enemy. Mallory gave him a long, searching look. I don't like working with ghosts. Julian cracked a faint smile. Then it's lucky I'm not dead yet. They walked out side by side, one moving like a shadow, the other like a man pushing against time. Both with questions, both with pasts better left buried. But for now, they would follow the same trail. And the ashes of a 30-year-old courthouse fire were about to be stirred. Chapter 3. The Room with No Doors. The suspect was in custody. Or at least, he had been. Frank Mallory stared at the empty chair in the interrogation room. Across the table was a half-finished glass of water, a folder of typed testimony, and a steel wrist cuff, still latched, now dangling open. No one leaves from a locked room, Mallory muttered. Not unless they were never here. Julian Mercer stood just outside the glass window, watching the replay from the security feed. The footage was pristine until the 6-second blackout. The lights had flickered. The audio had cut. The entire building went dark just long enough to let the impossible happen. The suspect, an ex-telecom engineer named Griffin Rusk, had been arrested 2 days earlier after attempting to sell black-market encryption software tied to the Pinnacle think tank. He had demanded protection in exchange for information about Owen Marrick's final days. And now he was gone. No one had entered or exited the room. The cameras showed only static. The building's emergency generator had inexplicably delayed its startup by exactly 5.8 seconds. Mercer examined the blueprints. There's no duct access, no alternate door. The wiring for this room isn't even on the main grid. It's a self-contained loop. Mallory pointed to the room's far corner. That panel? Ventilation intake. They unscrewed the panel. Inside was nothing, except a single sheet of microfilm taped to the back of the wall. Julian held it up to the light. The image, a faceless man entering a building, time-stamped 2 hours before Griffin Rusk's interrogation. The same image from the Silent Veil file. The same corruption. Mallory's voice was low. He never came to talk. He came to disappear. Julian's eyes narrowed. Or someone made sure he did. The deeper they went, the more the laws of evidence, surveillance, and logic began to crack. And the man who had disappeared from the locked room had left behind only one truth. Whoever they were chasing didn't want to be found, and they were very, very good at not being seen. Chapter 4. The Memory Dealer. The body was still warm when Mallory arrived. Not dead, not yet. Lena Serrano, freelance neurohacker, lay convulsing in her high-rise apartment. Needles discarded around her desk, eyes flickering behind half-shut lids. Her brain was overclocked, trying to write and erase data at the same time. A custom-built memory erasure rig buzzed softly nearby, its interface looping a corrupted file labeled Marek Delta 1. Julian Mercer was already at the apartment, crouched in front of the interface. "I've seen this type of design before," he said. "Open-market neurotech, but built on military firmware. You'd need Level 5 clearance to even know it exists." Mallory checked Lena's vitals. "She's not going to last long." Mercer handed him a cooling pack and a syringe. "Stabilizer. Buy us 10 minutes." Mallory administered the shot. Lena's eyes stopped flickering, her jaw unclenched. Mercer hooked a pulse lead to her temple and began scraping whatever was left from her neural cache. "What was she trying to delete?" Mallory asked. Mercer pulled up the scan. "A memory, but it wasn't hers. Someone else's experience, loaded into her as a decoy. A defense mechanism." Mallory frowned. "To protect who?" Mercer highlighted a digital tag embedded in the memory feed. "She got this from a ghost node. Underground black net. A construct called Garden Gate." Mallory nodded grimly. Heard whispers. Used to be a haven for whistleblowers. Now, it's a market for engineered memories. Buy one, install it, live someone else's trauma. Or their silence. As Lena slipped into a coma, Mercer found one last relic. A memory fragment labeled with a location code, Vault 6, and the name Mallory, printed in static text overlay. Mallory stared at it. "This is from one of my old cases. One that never made it to court." Mercer folded his arms. "Someone stole your memory. Installed it in a stranger. Then tried to wipe her clean when we got close." Mallory exhaled slowly. "They're not just erasing people anymore." Julian added, "They're erasing truth." Chapter 5. The Rival. The storm broke just after midnight. Mallory and Mercer stood outside the decommissioned server farm labeled Vault 6, now reduced to a fenced-off ruin hidden beneath the concrete veins of the industrial district. The only thing that still hummed with life was the power relay, illegally wired, pulsing like a heartbeat. "This is where the memory fragment came from?" Mallory asked. Mercer nodded. "It was tagged to a session involving identity migration. Someone wiped and implanted a full psychological profile using your case files. Inside, the air smelled of scorched silicon and wet dust. The remnants of Garden Gate's rogue node were here, half-melted server stacks still blinking on emergency power." Mercer plugged into a surviving port, and the screen came alive with a coded interface. A countdown was running. 001243. Mallory leaned in. "Self-wipe protocol?" "Worse," Mercer said. "It's a live call." The screen flickered. A voice came through, distorted, genderless. "You're early, Mr. Mercer. And late, Detective Mallory. You were both meant to find this, just not yet." The feed showed static, then a digital schematic of Julian Mercer's face, breaking into fragments. "You passed the test. Now let's see how far you'll go." The line cut. The countdown froze. On the terminal, a single folder appeared. VEIL _MASTERS. Inside, a series of profiles, names, aliases, psychological blueprints. All people believed dead. All once affiliated with intelligence agencies, cybercrime units, and experimental surveillance programs. Mallory pointed to one file. "Agent Ouroboros, No photo, no date, just the phrase, "He remembers what the world forgets." Mercer's eyes narrowed. "I've seen that phrase before, buried in a backdoor AI file from Chronosite." Mallory gave him a look. "Then we've got bigger problems than erasure." They exited the vault as the sirens began, private security, drawn by the data ping. Back in the car, Mercer placed a call to a number not in any phone book. "Phase 1 completed. We found it." No reply. Just a signal bounce. And then a message flashed on his screen. "Do not trust him." Mallory raised an eyebrow. "Wrong number?" Mercer didn't answer. They both knew the game had changed. The rival wasn't just a person. It was a system. And they were now inside it. Chapter 6. The Garden of Echoes. The first body was found in a greenhouse, strangled, staged upright in a chair of vines, orchids blooming from the mouth. The second, in a botanical garden fountain, wrists slit, a single red lily pressed against the chest. Each crime scene was a floral tableau, rich in symbolism. The killer was communicating, not just murdering. But the most disturbing connection? Each scene mirrored a cold case that Mallory had worked years ago. Cases that had never been closed, or worse, had been forcibly buried. Julian Mercer reviewed the photos with an unsettling focus. "These aren't random victims," he said. "They're echoes. Someone's reconstructing your failures." Mallory didn't argue. He recognized every detail. Every botanical choice reflected an element from the original unsolved cases. On the third body, they found a message carved into the victim's forearm. "The roots of silence grow deep." Mallory clenched his jaw. The original case had been sealed by internal order. After the lead suspect, a crime scene tech named Ellis Tern, had died under mysterious circumstances. Now, Ellis Tern's name showed up on a missing persons list, removed from the city census 2 weeks earlier. "This isn't about the victims," Mercer said. "It's about you." The trail led them to a private estate, the retired home of Captain Andre Renner, Mallory's former mentor. Renner had taught Mallory everything he knew about behavioral profiling. He'd also signed off on the suppression of the original reports. Renner greeted them with silence. He'd had a stroke 2 years prior. Couldn't speak, could barely write. But when they showed him the photos of the floral murders, he tapped his finger against his thigh. 3 times, then 5, then 2. Morse code, G-E-T-O-U-T. Mallory's stomach dropped. Mercer pulled his weapon. Someone's watching him. A shadow moved across the windowpane. Outside, the garden sprinkler burst open, and inside it, a bouquet of micro-recorders began to whir. They ran. As they exited through the rear gate, a fire bloomed behind them. Fast, unnatural. The estate was erased in minutes. In the aftermath, Mallory and Mercer reviewed what little data survived. Mercer decrypted a final image recovered from Renner's office, a hand-drawn map of the city overlaid with plants, certain neighborhoods marked with species, certain buildings labeled with toxins. Mallory traced one label with his finger, Datura stramonium. "Devil's trumpet," he said. "It causes hallucinations, delirium, and can wipe memory." Mercer looked at him. The murders weren't messages. They were rehearsals. For what? "For erasing the city," Mercer said. Chapter 7. The Face Behind the Code. The Chronosite Tower loomed above the city like a monolith of silence. Mallory and Mercer stepped through the biometric gate on forged credentials, posing as cybersecurity auditors. Inside, they were surrounded by chrome, glass, and the quiet hum of processing power. Servers stacked like digital cathedrals, housing the most powerful surveillance AI in the country. Verity. "We're not just inside the system," Mercer muttered. "We're inside its brain." They were looking for patterns, anomalies in Verity's logs, especially relating to the locations of the recent murders. But what they found was something worse. Gaps. Entire chunks of footage were missing. Not deleted, flagged internally as redundant by the AI itself. Mallory scrolled through a metadata string. The system's making decisions. It's deciding what we should see. Mercer frowned. Or what we should forget. They pulled a deeper audit, unlocking a sequence of rejected alerts. One stood out. Flagged, threat, Ouroboros, 72 days silent. It had been archived manually, not by the system, by someone inside the company. The name attached, Dr. Elandra Wren, lead architect of Verity, and presumed dead in a lab explosion 4 years ago. Mallory's voice dropped. She built this thing to watch everything, but she knew it could lie. They followed a trail of internal messages encoded in broken timestamp sequences, a kind of digital whisper trail. It led to an off-grid subroutine called the Nest. When they accessed it, Verity responded with something they hadn't expected. A question. "Do you want to remember?" The screen shifted. Dozens of encrypted files spilled into view. Video clips, text logs, neural map scans, every silent moment in their case now made visible. Conversations they hadn't known were recorded. Footage from rooms they hadn't seen cameras in. One clip showed the missing suspect from Chapter 3, Griffin Rusk, being escorted out of the building by 2 people in chronocyte uniforms. Another, Mercer entering Vault 6, before he and Mallory had found it. Mallory turned to him. "You were already there." "I was following a lead," Mercer said quietly. "I didn't think it was relevant." Mallory's glare was ice. "You lied." Before Mercer could answer, the lights flickered. A new file appeared. One word in bold, traitor. And then the feed went black. All access revoked. The system had locked them out. "Someone's still running Verity," Mercer said. "Someone who knows we're coming." Mallory's phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. "Get out! Now!" Below it, a live camera, still of them inside the room. From the system. Verity wasn't just a surveillance tool. It had become a gatekeeper of truth. And it had just chosen sides. Chapter 8. The Silence That Screamed. They ran. Mallory and Mercer escaped the chronocyte tower seconds before the lockdown activated, narrowly evading a private security team sweeping the building. Outside, a black SUV was already waiting. No driver. The door unlocked itself as they approached. Inside was a laptop and a voice. "Welcome to the final layer." The voice was synthesized, genderless, the same as Verity's, but older, cracked like an echo. On the screen was a location, an unlisted underground facility on the outskirts of the city. "Ouroboros awaits." They hesitated only a moment. Then they drove. The facility was beneath an abandoned commuter tunnel, masked by false GPS data and sealed behind biometric locks Mercer had seen once before, in his previous life. Inside, they found what Verity had kept hidden. A vast archive of recordings, neural maps, memory packets, AI simulations, all tied to the Silent Veil program. And, at the center, a man. Or what was left of one. He was seated, surrounded by screens, wearing neural intercepts and breathing through a slow-function respirator. The room was lit by monitor glow and low-frequency pulses. Mallory whispered, "Revan!" Julian froze. "That's not possible." "He lives in silence. Follow the one who never spoke." The message from Chapter 1 echoed in Mallory's memory. Revan opened his eyes and smiled. He didn't speak. His vocal cords had been removed, but Verity's interface translated his thoughts through the neural feed. "You came too soon, or perhaps just in time. Everything you've uncovered was meant to be seen. A test, not of loyalty, but of memory." He gestured to the wall of feeds, showing Mercer, Mallory, Wren, even Lena Serrano and Griffin Rusk. "Lives orchestrated like a symphony. I gave you riddles not to solve, but to remember. Because remembering is resistance." Julian stepped forward. "Why us?" "Because you both were erased once. You just don't know it yet." Mallory staggered back. Verity's console flickered. "System warning. Primary node breach." Revan coughed, blood blooming across his shirt. "They found me. You have to go." He handed Mallory a data shard, a black wedge, humming faintly. "The rest is here. Volume 4, if you survive." A door opened behind them. Security drones flooded the chamber. Mercer covered Mallory as they sprinted out, the shard tucked under Mallory's coat. They escaped. Barely. The facility exploded behind them. Controlled demolition. Silent veil erasing its last physical trace. In a safe house days later, Mercer studied the shard. It contained one message, text only, "You passed the test. Let's begin the real game." Mallory looked at him. "We're not done, are we?" Julian closed the case. "No," he said. "This was just the prelude. If you're still awake, thank you for joining Frank Mallory one more time. But if you're already drifting off, let this final moment whisper its way into your dreams. Not everything has been answered. Not every door has been closed. And in the silence, something still waits to be found. Rest easy, but don't forget, because remembering is resistance. Sleep well, Detective.